Okay, going to talk to you a little bit about managing weeds in the landscape. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is lawn weeds. And just to tell you a little bit about some of the weed problems that we're seeing in lawns. And of course, you know where we are this time of the year. Things just start to shut down we're in September, we're in the fall, and lawns are not growing as much as they were. You're probably not mowing as often as you were before, say in July. So that's the good thing for many of you. You're not having to mow nearly as much, but we are seeing a lot of weeds right now. A lot of buttonweed, things like that in the yard. So if your lawn is a weedy mess, if you look out in that yard right now and you just see a sea of weeds and lawns in poor shape, there may not be something going on correctly with how you're managing the lawn. And we see this a lot. Some lawns are pretty finicky. St. Augustinegrass, for instance, is a very finicky lawn, and it has to be maintained properly or it will thin out and you'll have weed issues with it. So the thing is, a healthy lawn just doesn't have a lot of weed problems. That's the thing to understand here. We grow several different kinds of lawns in Louisiana. These are warm season grasses that are going to go dormant to semi-dormant this wintertime. St. Augustine grass is the wider leaf of the lawn grasses, has some shade tolerance, but no grass will tolerate deep shade. It has to have some sunlight. So deep shade under a bunch of live oak trees, St. Augustine and most other grasses are just going to fade out in those areas over time. Centipedegrass is a grass that doesn't have a tremendous amount of shade tolerance, but more than, say, Bermudagrass. Centipedegrass is a grass you don't really take as good a care of. You don't have to fertilize it quite as much, but the thing about centipedegrass is it just cannot tolerate staying wet all the time. So if you have poor drainage, centipedegrass will just kind of fade out on you. You mow centipedegrass very short. It likes to be maintained, around an inch, inch and a half. Zoysiagrass is probably my favorite lawn. I tell everybody this, and it's because it has less problems. It's a tough lawn. It's what I have in my front yard. And with zoysiagrass, you fertilize it once or twice per year. You mow it short. You keep your mower blade sharp, and you don't have too many problems with it. Bermudagrass, if it's common Bermudagrass or a hybrid Bermudagrass, it does like fertilizer, and so you would fertilize it to keep it healthy and keep it thick. But that's the thing is with Bermudagrass, you got to keep it mowed, and it likes to be mowed often. And if you mow it irregularly, like every 10 days or so, every time you cut it, it looks like you've scalped it every time because you're taking all the green growth off. It needs to be cut more frequently. So that's these are the grasses typically that we're going to grow in Louisiana. I'm just going to take them individually here in a second. The thing is, though, with all of these grasses, we're about to enter the winter time, and it's a great time to get a soil sample and see where you are fertility-wise. Again, we're trying to get that lawn in such good health during the growing season that you don't see a lot of weed problems in it. So you mow it at the right height, you water it when it's dry, you aerate it, and that is the big game changer that I'm seeing throughout the state, throughout everywhere, really. If you can aerate that lawn, if it's compacted, you do this during the growing season, it's a game changer, changes lawns. I'll show you some pictures here in a second. A thick, healthy lawn doesn't have a lot of weed problems. So fertilize your lawn appropriately. St. Augustine grass loves fertilizer, and you could fertilize it in April, June, and August. And I really want you to get a soil sample, see where you are fertility-wise. When you're not feeling well, you go to the doctor, and the doctor wants you to get a blood test. Well, for us, the blood test is a soil sample. We want to see where that soil is fertility-wise, where that pH is. Your lawn is growing in that soil, and so that really has the biggest effect on your grass, that whatever's going on in that soil. So we take that soil sample and we get a lot of information from it. So get a soil sample. This fall is a great time. This winter is a great time. You can submit that sample to our lab. Your county agents will help you in your area, and they can help you interpret those results. So, but if you don't do that, you could go with something like a 4:1:2 ratio. It doesn't have to be exactly that, but a 4:1:2 ratio would be a good way to go. And how much do you put out? Well, when you're flying blind, you want to put out the equivalent of a pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. And the way you figure that, if you see that 24:6:12, 100 divided by that first number. So that means 100 divided by 24 is 4-ish. So about 4 pounds per 1,000 square feet. If that were a 33, blah, 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 it would be 3 pounds per 1,000 square feet. If it were a 10 by 10, 10, 10, it would be 10 pounds per 1,000 square feet. So how much do you put out? Whatever that first number is, which is nitrogen, 100 divided by that first number, will tell you how much you need to put out per 1,000 square feet. And, if it's a 13, 13, 13, it would be somewhere around 7 to 8 pounds per 1,000 square feet. So whatever that first number is on the fertilizer bag, 100 divided by that number, that's how much fertilizer you put out per 1,000 square feet to put out 1 pound of nitrogen. And that's how much nitrogen we usually put out at any one time. But we're not in the kind of time of year when you would be doing a lot of fertilizing. So this time of the year is a time to prep and get those soil samples, see where we are fertility wise, and next April, that's when we'll start fertilizing again. But you might be putting some lime out, maybe during the fall or wintertime, and we don't know unless you do the soil sample. So with St. Augustine grass, the surefire way to cause it to decline is to cut it short, to not fertilize it very much. That August application of fertilizer is kind of an optional one, but it is possible to put that third application out, especially if that lawn is not doing well. St. Augustine has a lot of problems, a lot of disease problems, a lot of insect problems, and so we keep the fertility good. We maintain it 3 inches. It's still going to have problems, but it's going to have the capability to recover from all those problems. And a good thick St. Augustine grass doesn't have a lot of weed pressure. What about Centipedegrass and up in the Pineville area, Denham Springs area, those areas of the state where the pH is kind of low, fertility is not as good. Centipedegrass is a very good choice for those areas. The thing about centipede is it cannot tolerate poor drainage. So I see this a lot in the Baton Rouge area, where they try to put 1,000 houses in an acre of ground. I'm overstating it, but they put a lot of houses, and the drainage sometimes is not really well thought out, and so the backyard may not drain well, or we may have a back fence or a flower bed along the back fence, which acts as a levee system. And during the winter time, we get a lot of rainfall and water's not draining well. Centipede grass will stay saturated all winter long, and it'll die. It'll just kill it. Another thing about centipede grass is we mow it too tall. It needs to be maintained at about an inch, inch and a half. And so bring that mowing height slowly down if you haven't, if it's pretty tall. Otherwise, right now, we're in a time of the year where it's not growing too fast anyway, but slowly bring it down if you can with the remaining growing season. Don't let it get too tall. It doesn't like that. It gets real thatchy. It develops an organic matter layer, and that stays saturated all winter long, and it'll decline or die on you during the winter time. So Bermudagrass, which I know up in the central region and northern Louisiana, there's a lot more Bermudagrass lawns. I've seen some though in St. Tammany Parish. There's a few more of these hybrid Bermudagrasses. They love fertilizer. They can't handle shade. That's why we don't see a lot more Bermudagrass lawns. They just can't handle shade. If you try to put Bermudagrass in a shady area, it's going to be real thin. It's going to be a weedy mess. With Bermudagrass, you fertilize it kind of like you do St. Augustine. If it's a hybrid and you want to make it look like Tiger Stadium, you would fertilize it a lot more often, and it needs to be mowed a lot more often too. To make it look really good, and you really could be mowed 2 to 3 times per week. You just have to keep telling yourself how therapeutic it is to mow the yard. But most people aren't going to do that. If you can get once a week, it'd be good. And if you're going once a week, you need to be probably somewhere around 2 inches tall on your mowing height. But it does like fertilizer. It does like good sharp mower blades. So that's the thing. Bermudagrass is very tough. It can handle a lot of things, but the one thing it can't handle is shade. So if you have a lot of trees, you're not going to grow Bermudagrass in your lawn. What about Zoysiagrass? And again, I told you this was my favorite and way underused in the state. Really tough, runs on top of the ground and under the ground. So it has runners on top of the ground, like St. Augustine and centipede grass, but it also has runners under the ground like Bermudagrass. And so it makes it more drought tolerant. And it can handle wear and tear much better than St. Augustine and centipede. Not quite as good as Bermudagrass, but very good, very drought tolerant, probably the most drought tolerant of all our grasses. With this one right here, it comes out of dormancy a lot more slowly, and so you're going to be fertilizing it in April, but it may be toward the end of April when you make that first fertilizer application. I usually make a second application in July. With Zoysiagrass, you cut it short. If you grow it like you're trying to grow St. Augustine, it has kind of the color of St. Augustine. People want to grow it like St. Augustine, but you cut it short. If you cut it tall, it thins out, but it gets real thatchy, and then it gets real weedy too. So mow it, fertilize it correctly, and it doesn't have a lot of weed problems. Use a very sharp mower blade with Zoysiagrass, because it will dull your mower blade, and that's what we've seen through the years. Is it gets grown too tall. And it becomes a mess if you do that. So Don't do that. But there are ways to change lawns, and I've seen this before. There are game changer things you can do to a yard to get it really thick and healthy, and that's aeration. And I'm just seeing it all everywhere. It just changes everything. You're not able to grow the lawn. It doesn't look good, ever look good, and then the soils are compacted and we aerate it, and it changes everything. It provides channels for water to go down through the profile. When you irrigate your lawn, it might just sit there and not go downward. The water may not go downward because it's so compacted. And so aeration is important. Aerate that lawn, loosen that soil up, that roots will get more oxygen. It's a game changer. I've seen it completely change lawns that look terrible. And the thing is, you get decreased root growth when you have compacted soils, and certain weeds like goosegrass, and we got annual bluegrass, which is POA, that's germinating probably right about now with these cool temperatures that we're having. So if you can aerate during the growing season, I like that April to September period for aeration. Get that soil loosened up. You'll get a lot of root growth after that, and it'll stimulate shoot growth, which is the green part. What you can do is take a compaction detection device that you see there in the picture. We're selling these. These are $200 a piece. Just give me your credit card information. Not really. That's a screwdriver, and you can take that screwdriver, push that in the soil, and if you feel a lot of resistance, you feel like you're having a hard time pushing it through the soil, well, the roots are going to have a hard time going through the soil. You can try a really good area of your yard versus a poor area, and very often you'll find that it's a soil problem, like that soil super compacted. In that area, certain weeds will just take it over. Goosegrass, for instance, annual bluegrass will be worse in those areas. The lawn will decline in those areas. So aeration is a game changer, and it can really change your lawn. This is last year during the big COVID epidemic when we were all home a lot. I had somebody in the Baton Rouge area send me a bunch of pictures, and they sent me pictures of their yard, and this is what it looked like in April. And I said, well, let's get a soil sample. Let's see if that soil's compacted. And so that's what they did. They had a company that a herbicide that sprayed a bunch of herbicides there, and it was declining from that too, very compacted. But so we put them on a recovery plan. We had them get a soil sample, and those soil samples showed that they had some nutrient deficiencies. The soils were very compacted, and so we got them to aerate a couple of times, and I tell you, got the water to work for it. The water would go into the soil instead of running out into the street, and I tell you, it was a huge game changer by September of 2020. And I've had somebody this year send me pictures too. They did the same thing, and it just changed everything. So you can rent those aerators from rental places. So companies will do that for you too. You can get a company to come in and aerate it for you. It is a game changer. You would do that during the growing season. I've seen it work in all species of turf grass. It just changes everything to loosen that soil up. Our heavy clay soils can get compacted. Even sands, fine sands can get compacted. Weeds will take those areas over. The lawn becomes non-competitive in those areas, and this is a game changer. Consider that next April, May, somewhere in that period. And if you have severely compacted soils, consider aerating a couple of times at least. But you could aerate in really heavy clays. You could aerate 3 or 4 times next growing season. Real game changer. Now you can aerate any time of the year, but I like to aerate when the root system really responds to it, and that's during the growing season. But you can aerate any time of the year. This is just another shot of an area that really changed over time, over just a few months of doing the right thing. So the way we prevent weeds in the lawn is by taking care of the yard, taking better care of the yard. So if you look out and your yard's a mess, you got the beauty of it is next spring is a new period for you to change everything. And it starts probably with a soil sample this fall. So you're going to have winter weeds germinating in the yard. There's no doubt about it. That's going to be coming. In fact, it's probably happening since we've been cool the last few nights. Annual bluegrass is probably coming. Lawn burweed or sticker weed starts germinating a lot in October, but it's stimulated by these cool nighttime temperatures. So we're going to start seeing that one. That's the one that you step on in April and it sticks in your feet and hurts really badly. But it starts germinating in October, or sometimes at the end of September, which is where I think it's going to be this year. So there are herbicides you can put out, and I tell you, these are a couple of good ones to purchase that are very effective. I'll tell you how to use them in just a second, but the weed-free zone is a mixture of 2,4-D, dicamba, mecoprop, and carfentrazone, and then atrazine is atrazine. You can find it at garden centers. These are garden center products. You can get them for with hose-in sprayer types out there. It makes it a little bit easier to apply, but these are some really good winter weed herbicides, and I like them in combination with each other. Now, you can either spray them separately, like I have it here with weed-free zone going out first, and then you put atrazine second. It doesn't matter the order really, or you can also put them in the same sprayer and spray them at the same time. But if you spray them separately, you want to spray them within a few days of each other. And I like October, November for that first application, and then come back again in January, February, somewhere in that period right there. You have a nice window there. So October, January, somewhere in that area, October, November would be your first time to put it out, and then follow that up again and probably into January, early February. This is going to remove annual bluegrass, and it's going to remove lawn burweed. The order of those herbicides is not critical. You know, it doesn't matter which one you go first with, or you can put them in the same sprayer and just spray them out. That has been very good. It's worked really well on some of the more problematic weeds you'll find in a lawn during the wintertime. Lawn burweed, annual bluegrass, a couple I mentioned, but henbit, chickweed, these are all common things that bed straw, also called sticky willy. That's the one that sticks to you when you walk through the yard. Atrazine is in there for the annual bluegrass. That's the most common winter grass that you're going to see. And that's what you see in your yard all by April. It's all seeding out in your yard and makes a lot of seeds. It's an indicator. It indicates compaction, but it also indicates wet conditions too. So big seed producer, starting to see a lot of resistance with this herbicide. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some alternatives to atrazine. But this is a big problem that we're seeing everywhere, annual bluegrass. And that's a winter grass that you'll have in your yard coming up. You just don't see it right now, but it's germinating right now. And lawn burweed, that one's also germinating right now. You can treat it in November. I like October, November, somewhere in that period. That's the one that sticks in your feet. You know, you don't have any stickers on it all through the wintertime growing season. But when you start getting into spring, that's when it finishes its life cycle. It's an annual. It's in the aster family of all things. Same family as dandelion. It makes a little yellow flower that you never notice. But it's in the, it'll produce those stickers, which are seed capsules with little barbs on them, and they are painful. And you walk across your yard, your dog walks across the yard and he steps on it, and he didn't like stepping on it. A lot of my coaches will call me, they're doing their spring training for their football team, and they'll call me in April and May, and this is all over their practice fields, and they want to know what to do about it because it's sticking their players. Well, really and truly, it's too late at that point to try to do anything with it. You know, you get into October, November, that's your first application. Come back in January, February with the second application, you won't see this particular weed problem. You can also use pre-emergence herbicides in the lawn, and those pre-emergence herbicides are good for annual bluegrass for the wintertime, and they're good for crabgrass and goosegrass in the summertime. You want to, in most of Louisiana, somewhere around or before Valentine's Day is when you put them out. There's a couple of them out there that's available at garden centers. That Scott's Halts product, I've seen that at big box stores too. But garden center is going to have a lot of these products, and you just simply, they're granular. They don't have a fertilizer on them. They're not on a fertilizer granule. And you would just simply put those out somewhere before Valentine's Day, and it will help you out. You reapply them around Easter. Really helps you out with some of those annual grasses in the lawn. In the wintertime, you could put them out. It's kind of an alternative mode of action over atrazine, and it kind of helps you with resistance issues that we're seeing with annual bluegrass. And so September would be the timing for these pre-emergence herbicide. You're probably a little bit late this year if you're going to be putting this out in the next 3 or 4 days. I'd still probably put them out for annual bluegrass too. But these are widely available, very effective with a follow-up application. If you decide to put these pre-emerge herbicides out for the wintertime, I'd put it out immediately, and I'd probably reapply it somewhere around Halloween just to give that follow-up application and longevity of control. So this is another good purchase right here. I'm a big fan of MSM Turf when it comes to controlling weeds, broadleaf weeds in particular in the lawn. This one is very effective. The one grass that it kills is Bahia grass, and that's that grass that makes that V-shaped seed head. You mow your yard, 2 days later, that seed head's back up looking at you again. V-shaped seed head. That's the one grass that it kills, but it's very effective on many weed problems. It's very good on lawn burweed, pretty good on Virginia buttonweed, good on dollarweed. So this is something to consider. You might consider purchasing it. It used to be very expensive. It's not super expensive now. There's some other trade names out there, but this is metsulfuron is the active ingredient. Very low use rate herbicide, extremely low use rate. We're talking like 1/10 of a teaspoon of these little granules per gallon of water. A little surfactant in there, and then that gallon of spray material will cover 1,000 square feet. So very low use rate, 1/10 of a teaspoon to 1/8 of a teaspoon. I had someone thought, well, 1/10 of a teaspoon and 1/8 of a teaspoon would do really well. Well, what would a tablespoon per gallon do? Kill live oak trees and crepe myrtle trees. So don't go crazy with it. Just it's 1/10 of a teaspoon. There also has a little measuring device with it. Sometimes it doesn't come with it. Sometimes they're sold out of them or something, and they won't have the little device with them. But this is a very good herbicide, but you got to use it at very low use rates and very effective. Really good on common Lespedeza, which we see a lot in the Pineville area, and just a very effective herbicide. We did a test in 2019, a replicated trial with many different herbicides used in lawn care. And MSM, which is metsulfuron, was by far the best looking herbicide on that particular weed. It's pretty good on dollarweed as well. And so that it indicates wet areas, but it's in the parsley family. It's a broadleaf, and it's actually pretty good on dollarweed. And it's pretty good on Virginia buttonweed. And it's more of a program approach in Virginia buttonweed. With Virginia buttonweed, and it's out like crazy right now, and I actually have some right here in my pocket here. So this is Virginia buttonweed, and Virginia buttonweed makes that white flower. And I don't know how well you can see this, but it is out. It makes a mat in the yard. Buttonweed is out right now. It forms a mat in the yard, and under that mat will be your dead lawn, and it's a lawn killer. So we want to control buttonweed, but we're already almost in October, and buttonweed is a summer perennial. The first good frost will burn it back. It's not going to kill it. It's just going to burn it back, and it'll go dormant. So right now we're at a point where you almost can't kill it with anything. You're probably better off to try to hand remove it right now as much as you can, because it produces those little buttons, which are really seed capsules. There's 2 seed in each capsule. And so if you can hand remove as much as you can, throw it in a trash can. I would even compost it. I'd just get rid of it. And this is a #1 weed problem in southern turfgrass, very hard to control. We're at the end right now to try to do anything with it. You're probably better off just to hand remove it. But if you could catch it in April, it starts emerging in March and April. And I like that weed-free zone product, spot treated on it in April. And you might can get 2 applications. And the seedlings will start germinating around it. The mother plant will come back from a rootstock, but there's a lot of seeds that will germinate around that plant. They're easily killed. The mother plant's the hard one to kill, but you keep hitting it with something. So once you try a couple of applications of the weed-free zone, then we get above 85 degrees, and that's when you start using either MSM or you'll use Celsius, another very good product. I like to alternate MSM and Celsius on Virginia buttonweed. The thing is, you're putting something out on it about every 6 weeks through the growing season in a severe situation. You'd never give Virginia buttonweed a break. It's the #1 weed problem in southern turfgrass, and I just would say just stay on top of it. Now, I recommend MSM a lot. I don't own stock in the company. I just recommend it a lot because it's always looked pretty well in our test plots. And I recommend it a lot, but don't get crazy with it. I mentioned it's a very low use rate herbicide. I have work complaints where they've gone a little crazy with it. You can kill trees if you go overboard with it. So if you stay within the rate, you'll be fine. But sometimes it's counterintuitive. You're putting this little small amount out and you think that's going to kill these weeds. Well, it will. But if you put a lot more than that out, you may have some collateral damage that you'll have a hard time explaining. So it's a very good herbicide, good on many different weed problems, but don't get crazy with it. Use it correctly, follow the product labels, and I think you're going to find you get some pretty good weed control with it. But going after buttonweed now, it would be very hard to control it with anything. That's when you get that very therapeutic hand removal that really will get rid of a lot of seeds for next year, but you're going to have the mother plant coming back from that rootstock. It's going to break off in your hand. So how do you put these herbicides out? Well, The thing is, we have a lot of methods for applying these herbicides. And so you've got your pump up sprayers. Some people have those solo backpack sprayers, which allows you to put a lot of material out. And they're very effective. You know, there are ways to calibrate those materials. You try to go with about a gallon per 1,000 square feet. So every 20 by 50 area, you want to try to put either 3/4 to a gallon of spray material in that area. Hose end sprayers are real easy to use. Broadcast sprayers, I know up in your the region where you're at, in central region, there's a lot of huge yards and there's a lot of four-wheelers putting these things out and tractors with these big yards. And so you can really do a good job and calibrate those sprayers and do a good job. And granular fertilizers and granular herbicides are available too. A lot of the weed and feed products are out there that are granular. So the thing is, before you put any of these products out, you want to always read the product labels. Because like I was telling you with the MSM Turf, it's a very good herbicide, but you can cause some damage if you're not careful. So read those product labels and you'll have successful weed control. Don't try to go after things that are way mature like now. You're going to probably be disappointed with your results on Virginia buttonweed. But there's not a great salvage herbicide this far along, almost in October, for Virginia buttonweed. So hand removal is not a bad idea. I know with some situations it would be just an arduous task and not possible, but Virginia buttonweed is a huge problem. It's a lawn killer. You need to try to get rid of it. But I've talked to people that just surprisingly love it. I guess it's killed their yard and they like it. They like the flowers, you know. It's got the white flowers and they've kind of grown to embrace it as their yard. So you might have to do that too if it gets to the point where it just takes over. So the keys to a great lawn, of course, get the lawn healthy. Get it thick and healthy. Mow it at the correct mowing height. Get a soil sample. This is the time of the year to get that soil sample, and you may need to adjust your pH. I know in the Pineville area, you may need to get some lime put out, but you don't know unless you do a soil sample. Keep your mower blades sharp and mow these lawns at the appropriate height. You'll take the competitiveness out of St. Augustine if you cut it short and it stresses it and sets it up for some disease problems. You'll also want to irrigate deep and infrequently. And when you aerate the lawn, the game changer, I believe, what may be the missing link to you having a beautiful lawn is just the fact your soil is very compacted. When you irrigate a lawn that's been aerated, you're going to actually deeply irrigate that lawn, and you won't have to irrigate as often. And the root system on that lawn will go more deeply in the soil. It's going to be a much healthier lawn. So I would challenge you, if you're having struggles with that lawn, consider aerating it. Next growing season, you're going to see a big change. I haven't seen it ever not help a lawn to aerate it. So now we all have flower beds, and we want to talk to you a little bit about some strategies for controlling weeds in the flower bed. I'm a big believer in mulch. Mulch is a terrific way to kind of hold weeds back. It's kind of it blocks, it's a physical barrier. And so these weed seeds may germinate, but they got to grow through that mulch. And sometimes they'll just run out of energy. You know, you'll pull that mulch back and you'll see these weeds that are real yellow that just didn't make it, you know, and just ran out of energy before they grew through the mat of the mulch. And so another thing too is some of these weed seeds need light for germination. And that mulch is like a covering on that lawn or on that flower bed that will protect that lawn, that flower bed, the flower bed from germination of some of these weed seeds because the light can't get to those weed seeds. So mulch is a good thing. About 3 inches or so of mulch is a good thing. It will help you with certain weeds, and we'll talk about them in just a second. But I also like mulch plus pre-emergence herbicides, and they're available to you as homeowners. There's a lot of them out there. You're probably familiar with Preen and some of the Miracle Grow products, but professional products are also available to you. They're a little more expensive, but often they're the same thing as the homeowner type herbicides, but they have more active ingredients. So you end up using less, and they're more practical, and you know, you end up using less, and it's not that they're better, but they have more active ingredients. So you end up not having to carry as much out to the flower bed. Snapshot's one of my favorites. You can't use it in bedding plants, but it's a very good product. So how do you use these pre-emergence herbicides in the flower bed? Well, if it's a pre-existing flower bed, I remove the weeds by hand, or I spot treat glyphosate, which is Roundup, or a glufosinate, which would be Finale or Decimate. Spot treat herbicides on it, or hand remove the existing weeds. And I sprinkle these granules as directed over the existing flower bed. You know, with your plants there, these granules, most of them are granular, especially at the homeowner level. And I sprinkle it out over your flower bed, and you rinse off your flowers, and you water these granules in. So the way they work is they have to get watered in. They create that barrier when you water them in, and they don't go very deeply in the soil, maybe a 1/4 inch or so, and it's like a thin piece of saran wrap over your mulch. So right on top of your mulch. Now, if you're putting new mulch on your old mulch, in most cases you'd be better off to put if you're going to remove the old mulch, you remove the old mulch, put the pre-emerge herbicide down, and put the new mulch on top of it, water everything in. But if you've got an existing flower bed right on top of the mulch, and then you rinse your plants off and water it in really well, and it creates that barrier. As the weed seeds germinate, they grow into that barrier, they absorb the herbicide, and you don't see it. It happens before they emerge. That's why it's called pre-emergence herbicide. So it's very good on annual grasses in a flower bed. Crabgrass, annual bluegrass, very, very good. But there's certain broadleaf weeds that's very good on too. And you understand, in your flower bed, you got all these weeds growing in your flower bed, and a lot of them are broadleaves. There's not a herbicide that you can spray in that flower bed that will kill broadleaves and not hurt your flowers, because you're growing broadleaves, you're growing marigolds, you're growing azaleas. These are broadleaves. And the weeds that are most troublesome in a flower bed are the ones that are broadleaves, like spurge, purslane, pigweed. Now, these pre-emergence herbicide actually are very good on purslane and spurge, these small seeded broadleaves. Now, spurge is the one, when you grab it and it breaks a branch, it actually has a milky sap that gets in your hand. That's spurge. Purslane is that waxy looking leaf. It's actually portulaca, but it's not a desirable flower, portulaca. All these are big seed producers. Pigweed makes 1 million seeds. So big seed producers, you'll see that spurge in the cracks of your concrete a lot, concrete slab. It's one of the most common weed problems to have in a flower bed setting. So pre-emergence herbicides will help you. Not a single application, but applying according as many times as the label allows, and that's how we keep all these weeds out of our flower beds. A lot of these weed problems out of our flower beds. So it's going to be kind of weak, though. Unfortunately, it's going to be weak on chamberbitter, and so I actually collected a chamberbitter. It is really producing a lot of seeds right now. I don't know how well you can see this, but those seed capsules underneath the leaves of a chamberbitter plant, there's 6 seed in each capsule at least. And so it's a lot of seeds produced by this plant. So what do we do about it? Well, we keep it hand removed. For one thing, we don't allow seed production. Some of these pre-emergence herbicides will have some activity, snapshot, freehand, or some professional options. There's one called Preen Extended Control at big box stores, and it's got a little activity. It's the same thing as snapshot, only it's half the active ingredient, so you end up using more. But periodic applications of these pre-emergence herbicides will help you with this summer weed. Now, chamberbitter starts germinating in April, and it can germinate a little earlier if we have a warm winter. But this is a huge problem in flower beds, and we see it a lot. It's a summer annual, native of Vietnam, huge problem. Keep it hand removed. Don't allow seed production. A good thick mulch also helps. And so it does need light for germination, so a good thick mulch will help you too. But it's a combination of mulch and pre-emergence herbicide and this right here. Don't let this produce seed. If you have it in your flower bed right now, go out there and very carefully remove it. Don't drop any of those balls off in your flower bed, because you're dropping seeds off. And I wouldn't compost this either. I would just destroy it. But this is a huge problem. Everybody's got it, and it's really producing a lot of seeds right now. It's trying to produce a lot of seeds because it cannot handle a frost. So it's on a crash course right now to produce a lot of seeds for your flower bed. Get out there and get it hand removed. You won't see it again until next April. They'll start germinating again. Get those pre-emergence herbicides. I like Snapshot. They've all been very erratic, though, unfortunately, when it comes to chamberbitter control. All very erratic. A good thick mulch helps. Don't allow seed production. Purple nutsedge. This is the #1 weed problem in all crops. And so it produces those tubers. You hand remove it. We call it cocoa a lot. You hand remove it. You leave the tubers in the soil. And so that's the problem with it. You know, it's easily hand removed, but you're leaving the business part of it, the part that's reproducing. One tuber that's in the soil will produce a shoot. And from that one tuber and that one shoot, in 100 days, 300 tubers can be produced. And so that's how quickly it can spread in your flower bed. It's already there. It's the #1 weed problem in all crops. So you're not going to hand remove it and get rid of it. So my favorite herbicide at the homeowner level is halosulfuron. This can be used in landscape beds. You can get it as sedgehammer. I've seen high yield sedge killer also out there, but sedgehammer is something available at garden centers, and very effective, very slow. You put it down as a directed spray, so you don't go over your flowers with it, but you put it down as a directed spray. Be very careful around daylilies and agapanthus. Be careful, but as a directed spray, it is very effective, very slow, 3 or 4 weeks to kill the sedges, but it is very good. We did a test, it's probably been 10 years now, hand removal versus spraying with halosulfuron and some other products. And it seems like it was 5 or 6 times more effective to spray halosulfuron than to go out and hand remove sedges in the landscape bed. So big fan of this herbicide, but just directed sprays, very, very effective though. But you know, the thing is with nutsedge, it is #1 of all weeds in the world. So you'll kill that one, and I always say this, but 1,000,000 will come to the funeral. You will kill it, but you'll be spraying in that flower bed. You're not through. So you just stay on top of it. And I'd say within 75 years, you'll have your flower beds completely rid of purple nutsedge. So there's hope there. Now, it's really hard to control nutsedge. So it's a long-term endeavor. So what about grass control in a flower bed? Well, Bermudagrass is one I see a lot of in the flower bed, wiregrass. We have herbicides that are pretty good on Bermudagrass with repeated applications. My favorite is the one that contains fluazafop, which is grass B Gon for Bermudagrass. But these bonide grass beater, these products with sethoxidam can be used in the vegetable garden, and they can be used in the flower bed as well. And so these are grass killer only. So many times you can go right over the top of your landscape plants, your non-grass landscape plants, and you can kill grasses without harming your landscape plants. So if you have a bunch of marigolds, or you got azaleas and you got Bermudagrass in there, you can go right over the top indiscriminately and knock the Bermudagrass back and not harm your non-grass landscape plants. Daylilies are not grasses. Liripe, mondo grass are not grasses. So you can remove those grasses in your landscape bed. Grass B Gon is probably my favorite when it comes to Bermudagrass. It contains fluazafop, same thing, same active ingredient as fusilade. So that's just a ready-to-use version of it that's out there, available at big box stores and garden centers. Very effective, good on Bermudagrass, and very safe on your landscape plants that are not grasses. You know, so if you got any kind of landscape grasses, ornamental grasses, then you wouldn't use these products over the top, but you can go right over the top of Liripe and mondo grass and kill Bermudagrass with these products. So for tough to control perennials, I still like glyphosate, but you spray it in a flower bed is real risky. So we have some non-spraying methods, and there's a recipe here. 3 ounces of a 41% glyphosate and 29 ounces of water. You can take a paintbrush. Some people still use a glove inside of a cotton glove, but a paintbrush, paint roller, sponge mop, and you can paintbrush those weeds in the flower bed, and it's very effective. Like that Liripe area that you see there, there's some oxalis, that pink flowered wood sorrel, and wiping that has been very effective for us. It translocates and kills the weeds in that flower bed. You're just very careful to use it. There's also, use it carefully, not touch your desirable plants with it. There's also this Roundup gel, which I think they're no longer going to be selling because it's just not very effective. It's very awkward to use it. We're also evaluating weed wipers. We've evaluated weed wipers through the years. We're evaluating one called a Smucker weed wiper right now. And I always say this, you know where I'm going with it, with a name like Smucker's. It's got to be good. Well, it does look pretty good in some of the tests that we've done so far. So that's a Smucker weed wiper. You can find it anywhere. The glyphosate water solutions in the pipe. and it has a sponge, and you just simply wipe the weeds in the flower bed. It's looked pretty good so far for us. So that wipe method is very good on Florida betony, which is rattlesnake weed. It's very good on torpedo grass. It's good on bush killer and other vines in the landscape bed. And so we like it a lot, that method of wiping or paintbrushing these herbicides where you can't spray it. You know, some areas you got to pull the weeds out of your flower bed. You have no choice, but for perennial plants, I think you should wipe a herbicide that will translocate. Another option that's out there for vines and unwanted plants like this Chinese tallow, poison ivy, Virginia creeper, products that contain triclopyr are going to be very effective. And those big vines up in the trees are seed sources. How do you get rid of them? Well, you take loppers. Of course, you're using rubber gloves because you don't want to get your hands in it. But you take loppers and you go out and you cut about an inch or so from the soil, make a stump, and then you use these triclopyr products that are available to you, and you treat the stump. There's a lot of them out there. There's Bonide stump killer. There's products from Bayer that contain triclopyr that are big box stores will have. But you just paintbrush the stump, or you apply it directly onto a fresh cut stump. And that's how we take trees, unwanted trees, volunteer trees like tallow trees right out of the landscape, unwanted briars, blackberry, dewberry out of the landscape. Just make a stump and treat these unwanted vines and woody plants with triclopyr. And so what are some of the versions that are easily available to you? Well, these are at garden centers, the stump vine, the Bonide stunted vine killer, the Bayer Bio-Advanced brush killer. This is at big box stores and some garden centers too. They're all 8% triclopyr, those first two there. They're the consumer-friendly versions that are out there. You can also take the middle one there, the Bio-Advanced version, and that can be sprayed. You can put 4 to 6 ounces in a gallon of water. If you have a fence row it's covered in vines or tallow trees or something, then you can go out and spray them and kill the vines. Where you won't hit any desirable trees, no problem at all. You can also go out into your flower beds, make a stump, and then directly treat that right in amongst your flower bed. And without hurting the flowers or the landscape plants, you can kill unwanted trees and vines easily with no collateral damage with these products. Now there's a more professional version called Pathfinder, and it's a ready-to-use product also. It's a more of a professional version. It's got a higher percentage of active ingredients, not restricted use. You can order it. But it's available to you. It's more expensive, but you are getting more active ingredients. So these are things you can do to kill those unwanted landscape plants. That cut vine and stump kill is a year-round thing. We're entering the fall. We're getting into the winter. You can do this year-round. You just can't have snow on the ground when you do it, which we usually don't have to worry about. But after this past year, wintertime, I think about that some. But this is a year-round thing. If you've got unwanted vines in the landscape, it's nice and cool right now. Go out there and kill them with these triclopyr products. Just make a stump and then treat that stump, and it's not going to come back from it. It's very, very effective. I've had no one call me and tell me this didn't work. So we've had good luck with it in our test plots, and consumers have had good luck with it. So people don't want to use glyphosate right now. There are some alternatives out there to glyphosate, synthetic things. Glufosinate is an alternative that's available, becoming more available. It's a non-selective herbicide. Decimate, Finale are trade names. There's also a Bio-Advanced version that big box stores are selling. It's a Bayer product. These are all made by Bayer. And it's not glyphosate. Glyphosate is Roundup. Glufosinate would be Decimate, Finale, Liberty if you're a farmer. And so these products are available to you. The difference between Roundup and these products like Decimate, glufosinate, which is the Decimate product, is more of a contact killer. You don't get a lot of translocation with it, or you'll spray the leaves and you burn what you hit. If you sprayed with glyphosate, you would hit the leaves and it would move down into the underground parts. That's the difference between these two herbicides. So it's probably not going to be as good on perennial plants, but it will not be Roundup, and it's an alternative, and I can see them phasing glyphosate out of the consumer market, and you'll probably have this alternative right here. We've looked at it a lot through the years, and it's a good herbicide. It's just not going to be quite as good on perennial things. And so this is something available to you. You can go to a garden center probably and get it right now. So you might also decide to go organic. And we've been looking at organic things through the years. There's a product here called Burnout, which is clove oil and citric acid, and we've evaluated it. It smells incredible. And it's pretty good on newly emerged annuals. It's not good on perennial plants because it just burns. It's like a big frost hitting your weeds. It's good in hot weather. I've seen it in some cool weather too. It's looked pretty good. So not as temperature sensitive as you might think. But it is a burner. It's a contact killer. It causes cell leakage. You'll get a burn. Coverage is a must. You can't halfway do it. You got to really get good coverage with it. And we looked at it, and it's not bad at all. It's just not going to kill perennial plants. And on a big annual that's very mature, you may have to make a follow-up application. But this is an alternative to a synthetic product. It's organic. Another one that we've looked at that's a ready-to-use product is a citrus oil-based product, and it also smells really good. These products are organic. They're made from something like citrus oil, which smells really good, and we like it. It's pretty good. It knocks down annuals. Good coverage is a must. Won't control perennials. Burns the leaves up, and if it's a summer annual or a winter annual that's got a good root system, it may recover from it, and you may need a follow-up application. But it is definitely an option. All these things that I'm talking about are non-selective. They won't know your flowers from the weed you're spraying it on. So you treat it like Roundup, but it's not going to be as effective as Roundup, but it is an alternative, and you can burn annuals back with it pretty well, newly emerged plants. So this is probably my favorite of the organic herbicides. It's polygonic acid. You don't have to buy the site name. There are other versions of it out there. We did a test in 2019. It was very good. Again, poor on perennials, but probably even better on some of the annuals that we tried it on. And it's contact. It's a contact herbicide, no soil residual. So you'll maybe burn some annuals back. It's not going to stop anything from coming back. Pretty effective though. Not something that you'll probably get away with one application on a very advanced weed. You may have to go back and spray it again in about a week. So just something to consider if you want to go organic. There's a pre-emergence organic that's out there that we've evaluated a lot through the last few years in vegetables and flower beds, and I like this one too. It'll tell you in the product label to reapply it every 28 to 30 days. What we've seen in our test plots in landscape beds especially is about every couple of weeks you'd have to reapply it because it breaks down pretty quickly. It is corn gluten, and it has an enzyme that inhibits germination. And it's not bad, but it does break down pretty quickly. It becomes fertilizer when it breaks down, and if you miss an application, the weeds get huge because you're feeding the weeds. But this is a pre-emergence that I like. I mean, it's not bad. It's expensive, and you got to reapply it often. But it is definitely an option if you want to go organic, especially in a landscape bed. So I think in summary here, when it comes to your lawn, you've got to get that lawn thick and healthy. And that means getting a soil sample this winter, seeing where you are fertility wise. You may have to adjust the pH, and you can do that, of course. This winter time, adding lime if you need to raise your pH. Like if you're in that Pineville area, that's not unusual to have to raise the pH there. Some areas of Rapides Parish and other areas and surrounding, the pH is really high, and you may have to adjust with sulfur, and it'll tell you about that in that when you do that soil report. And there's some adjustments you can do during the winter time. You can do some things like ammonium sulfate as your nitrogen source during the growing season. That'll also lower your pH. So you don't know any of this unless you get a soil sample. You can also, any time of the year, you can go out in that flower bed and add some mulch and hand pull weeds. That's a good thing to do. If you're going to be putting out mulch for the first time, you get rid of those existing weeds, put your pre-emerge herbicide down, water them in really well, put your mulch on top of it, water that in. If you're just putting out that pre-emerge for the first time and you hadn't put any mulch out, it works better under the mulch. If you've got an existing flower bed with a lot of weed pressure, go out there and hand remove those weeds, spot treat Roundup or whatever you're going to use to kill the existing weeds, or hand remove them. and then put a pre-emerge herbicide out on top of the mulch, water it in really well, and just know that a single application is not going to last for the entire growing season. You'll be applying it every 60 to 90 days, depending on the product labels. You can also use these grass killers on these summer grasses, especially Bermudagrass, for instance, right now, some crabgrass. You can spray these right in your liripe and mondo grass, which are not grasses, act more like broadleaves. And you can go, if you have unwanted grasses in those border grasses, which are really not grasses, you can spray these products, these grass killing products like that grass B Gon, for instance, for Bermudagrass. Very effective on Horticulture, mondo grass, or daylilies. You can spray them in your flower bed right over the top of your flowers. Won't hurt your landscape plants if you're going after grasses with these grass killer only herbicides. You can use the paintbrush or wipe method, that Smucker's thing that we're evaluating in the flower bed for existing weed pressures. And we've had good success killing unwanted perennial plants because that herbicide will hit the leaves and translocate to the underground parts and eventually kill those perennial plants. So another thing you can do right now and year round is if you got unwanted vines and unwanted trees in the landscape bed, your volunteer plants, tallow trees, make a stump about an inch from the soil and use Triclopyr. Just paintbrush it on or use an applicator. There's a lot of Triclopyr products available to you at big box stores and garden centers. Highly effective on brush and briars. So some of the things you can do right now in your landscape beds, and I think you'll like what you get. You know, you're going to like the kind of control you're going to get, especially with some of these grass killers and that Triclopyr product with these landscape bed issues that you're having. I'm a big fan of pre-emergence herbicide in conjunction with mulch. We've had just really good results in my own flower beds and in trials through the years. So something definitely to consider.